My name is Chris Cole, and I am a business advisor with the Maine SBDC. I've been here for 5 years now. Love my job. Love to meet new and aspiring entrepreneurs or people who've been in business for a while. Before I came to the Maine SBDC, I owned a restaurant for 13 years, and I was in the food industry off and on for about 30 years. I also did property management and sales and marketing. Um, so it's kind of interesting when picked this topic because I do work with a lot of people that want to start a mobile food business. But I actually had a mobile food business. So back in the 90s, I had a trailer that was fitted out, and we specialized in like pita pocket sandwiches, which were really popular then. And great location. I was on Route 1 between the Freeport exit and between the Yarmouth exit and the Freeport exit. If anybody knows where the Big Indian is there, I was right on that nice stretch. So we set up in mid-May, getting geared up for the season. And the 1st of June, what do? They start construction on the Yarmouth end of Route 1 and basically close off Route 1 for the entire summer. And they just continue to rebuild that entire road. Unfortunately for me, all I saw was construction workers and people that were really had their businesses on Route 1 and were looking for another option. I ended my season at the Cumberland Fair, and it was the year that, and it has snowed other years, but this year in particular, it was so cold and snowy and freezing. And I think I had enough. The fate said, "You're done with this." So I sold my food trailer to these other people who set up on Route 1 in Freeport, but the next summer was much better. They did burgers and barbecue, and they did it for a couple of years. And eventually they opened up a restaurant. Some people may know it. It's Bucks Naked. They went into the old Dexter Shoe in Freeport. So that's what happened to my food trailer experience. Hopefully other people have better experience than I did. So we're going to start with a poll. I've asked Aaron if he would just go ahead and put a poll out there. Are you ready for that, Aaron?
Yeah, I'm going to launch it right now, so everybody should see that and they can answer it.
Sure. What I'd like to know is really where you are at. If people don't mind just clicking one of those options, if you're thinking about it, and you're just kind of dipping your toes in here, or you already have a plan and you're getting ready to pull the trigger, or you're in business. If you would just go ahead and let me know what stage you're at, that would be great. And then, Aaron, if you can tell me.
Yeah, we're getting a bunch of responses in. It's like six folks have answered. We'll give it just another couple seconds, see if anybody else wants to answer.
Sure.
But right now, we're a third, and a third.
Okay, great.
So yeah, that's a
Excellent.
pretty good split. I think we'll leave it there.
Yeah. Awesome. So we're evenly split. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop my video because I like people to see what I am talking about and not necessarily see me through the entire thing. Um, and of course this always happens, right? When you first start. Let's see if we're moving here.
If it's
There
not,
we
you
go.
have to.
Yep,
Oh,
there we
all
go.
right. Yeah, there it
First slide
is.
is first slide has finally come up. This pictured here is a gentleman named Brud Pierce. Brud was well known in the Boothbay Harbor region, and for years I remember seeing him as a kid, through early adulthood and stuff. And he had this hot dog stand. It was on that chassis that it is now, but he started it in 1943, right after he came back from World War II, and ran it right up until 2004. So 60 years of doing it, and he was doing it every summer. I know that Brud did really well. And it wasn't so much the hot dogs, although everybody said they tasted delicious, but it was really about, for him, it was the customers. That was his passion, is just getting out in the community and getting to know all the people that were coming to Boothbay Harbor and the people that lived in Boothbay Harbor. So that may be your reason why you want to do this, because you like to work with customers. What do we do at the Maine SBDC? We provide no cost confidential business advising. And I have a great team that I get to work with, and my colleagues are experienced in all kinds of industries, but we're all generous as well. So even though I might particularly have a lot of knowledge about the food industry, I will work with any industry, as will the rest of my team. And we help you from the beginning through the middle to if you want to transition and sell your business. We are there for all of those things. What we don't do is provide legal or tax advice. So I'm going to always refer you, if you have a contract and you're saying to me, what do you think about it? I'm going to say, I think you need to talk to your attorney. And when it comes to your taxes, we don't do those for you. We're going to ask you to find a CPA. We have some great lists as well to recommend to you. But those are the items that we don't help you with. Today, it's being recorded. So if you want to keep yourself off camera, you're welcome to. I ask people to please be muted throughout the presentation. But if you have any questions, go right ahead and put them in the chat, because we'll have plenty of time at the end of this to do questions and answers. And these are just the things that we're going to go over. Hopefully we'll get through everything. When you start any business, what you really need to look at is what is happening in that industry, right? So whether you're making screen doors or you're going to sell food, what is going on in your industry? And we have tools to help folks find that out. Certainly, with Google and other search engines, you can kind of do a search, but we're here to help you with that as well. The good news for anybody looking in the mobile food industry is it's expected to grow. So these are the current statistics on it. It's going to grow about 5.5% over the next 5 years, year after year over the next 5 years. The average wage right now is $16.25 per hour for workers. That's something to keep in mind if you need to hire people. An investment in this can be as low as $3,500 up to $4,800 and beyond. There's some pretty fancy trucks out there if that's what you want to get into. Right now in Maine, Portland has 57 known food trucks, Bangor about 23, and statewide there's about 100 plus. So there's opportunity and there's competition out there. To keep up on your industry, you want to be looking into what's happening throughout the industry. So here are some links to industry information, periodicals that are written, and also blogs. This might be some good resources for you here as well. You started this business because you are passionate about whatever you make. So yes, we want a business plan. We're going to get into all of that, but what is it that you want to do? Are you a wonderful baker and you make all these great breakfast pastries, and that's what you want to do? Put your menu together first, thinking about, is it unique to the marketplace? Are there a lot of other people that's doing the same thing? If so, you may not want to do that. You might want to do something different. But also organizing your menu so that you can reuse items, right? It's nice to have inventory that you can use in similar products across your menu, and keep it simple. I sometimes see these menus with all these options, and you have customers sitting, or standing in front of your food truck just for like 10 minutes trying to figure out what they're going to order on your menu. But really keeping it simple is good. And like this example here, they do burgers. So basically they have, a beef truck and they offer some chicken. That's about it. The next thing is writing your business plan. No matter what business you go into, you want to make sure that you plan ahead. Even if you don't need money, it's really important to think about where your business is going to grow and how you are going to get there. Who owns the business? What experience do you bring to this business? What problem are you solving? What niche are you fulfilling for people? Who's your competition? And this is an area that I see so many times, no matter what industry people are in, they don't really think about who is my competitor, but think about who's your competition? What are they doing? What are their hours of operation? What do they charge? And what can you do different and better? What do you bring to the table that's different and better? Who's your customer? How are you going to reach those people, right? And really, how are you going to make money here? What do you need for a team to help you in this business? Um, you know, maybe you need someone to cook on a line for you, and that might not be your skill set. I mean, typically people going into this, they already know how to cook, but sometimes people are like, I want to start, I have money, I want to invest in a food truck, and I have this idea, but I need somebody to fulfill that. Or you need a cashier out front, or maybe it's big enough operation that you need someone to manage it. So thinking about all the positions that you need as well, who's going to help you in this operation. And then your financial planning. What do you need to get started money wise? And where are you going to get that money from? It might be from a bank. It might be from friends and family. It might be if you own a house. You know, I've seen people that take out a second mortgage or do a HELOC. So those are all the things you want to think about in your narrative. Once you write this, and usually people do this part first, then we go to the section that I find most clients have a difficulty with, and this is the cash flow. And the cash flow is something that everybody here in our organization that are business advisors happy to help you with. This is a snapshot of a cash flow that I worked on a client with that is doing a mobile food business. And we looked at first, how many customers do you think you're going to see a day? And what's your average ticket price going to be? So with this person, what they did is it was the year before they were going to set up. And where they were setting up, they went there a few different days of the week, different times of the day, and they did counts on the existing trucks and carts that were there to say, okay, how many people are they seeing, right? And they came up with this, on average, 150 customers that these businesses were seeing a day. And then they looked at their menu and they figured out what their average ticket price was going to be, whether that was adding a main item with a drink or different costing of the main items. They came up with $17 was the average ticket price. And then we multiplied that out by the 150 customers per day. And they decided they were only going to be open about 20 days per month. So when we do all that math, that's around $51,000 a month, but that's their best month. Okay. So that's like a pretty high number, one of their best months. When you first start out, it's not going to be that busy. So we do it gradual up through the season and then a gradual down as the weather gets bad, less people are coming out. Okay. And then we look at how this breaks out. Now, this sheet here, and I'm happy to share it with folks, and I send it out to a lot of people. I have it so it can pre-calculate, but in particular, your cost of goods, the amount of your sales. So we thought out of that $17 ticket, 84% of that was in food, 15.5% in the beverage. And then this particular business had some really cool merch. So we put in maybe 0.5% of your sales will be people buying your merchandise. And then we calculate our cost of goods sold, come up with basically your gross profit. And then from there, you need to take care of, if you have staff, you've got to pay them out of that, your insurances, your licenses, legal expenses. If you're renting a kitchen, how much is that? All the other supplies that go into it. And if you have a loan, right, what is that going to look like per month? So all of those things need to come out of that. And this running cash flow goes through the end of the year. And if this is your only business, the fixed costs are going to need to continue on in January, February, March until you're open again for the next season. So thinking about that carryover cash. If you're going for a bank loan, you're going to need a cash flow projection for 3 years out is what the bank wants to look at. Again, we'll help you with this. The first year has to be amortized out by month. With food businesses in particular, I like to do all 3 years by month, and happy to help you with that, but it doesn't have to be. The first year needs to be by month, and then beyond that, we can go by year. Once you have your business plan, cash flow is kind of put together, and this could come ahead of this as well. Sometimes I have people come to me like, I've already decided I'm going to be an LLC. Whatever entity you're going to be, make that decision. So if you want to be a sole proprietor, that's easy to do. You typically go register with your town and you get a business license from your town. LLC will register with the state, the same with an S Corp. And if you haven't thought about your entity, it's something we can talk about because there's different reasons for these different structures. Sole proprietor, typically, you're probably a one-person show and you, excuse me, have a product that might be really low risk, like maybe you're just selling cookies or scones or something like that. And sole proprietor makes sense. With an LLC, you're wanting to limit that liability. Maybe you have some assets you want to protect. Possibly you're going to have some employees. And then like with an S Corp, you're thinking right from the beginning, I want to put myself on a salary and be part, be one of the staff and be an employee of this business. We could look at all of those things. Once you get back your articles of incorporation or formation or your business license, then we're going to file for your EIN. Filing for your EIN is free. We cannot stress that enough. And you do it right through irs.gov. They will let you know instantly, but please don't pay for an EIN. Once you have that, we're going to go open a bank account. A lot of our local business, and we have many banks in the state, which is great, and credit unions. They either have low or no fees to have a business bank account. And even if you're going to be a sole proprietor, I highly recommend keeping a separate business bank account. That's why it's good to get an EIN. Even sole proprietors can have an EIN. So get one. It keeps your social security number a little more protected. And then if you're going to be an employer, you need to do some registration on that. Now, my colleague Tina did a great becoming an employer in Maine and all of the steps that you have to go through and agencies that you have to register with. So that is a clickable link to her webinar. I recommend watching that. I always send clients to it because it's very thorough. Don't forget to register with Maine IRS for state sales tax and make sure that you're collecting it at the correct rate. So I had a client who set up their POS system, they hit Maine, and then the POS system was collecting tax. What they didn't realize, the POS system was collecting the general sales tax, which is 5.5%, and not the prepared food rate at 8%. But that person still owed the state for the tax that they didn't collect. So make sure it's programmed correctly. And if you are selling merch and prepared food, those are two different tax rates. So again, just double check on your POS system. What are the options for mobile here, right? So you have all of your registrations, your license done, your business plan, and what do you need? What menu are you using? Do you want this unit to contain everything, to be your commissary kitchen? What makes sense for you? So a cart is really easy because typically you can either tow or push those right on the street. Easy to set up, take down, done for the day. Then we have the stick built. That requires some more work. And you have to have something and you have to assemble and disassemble that at the end of every day. Now, I know that there are some stick belts that are in fixed locations, and that really depends on the municipality if they can leave that there for the season. But if you're going to different events, that has got to be a consideration as well. A truck is great. Everything's contained. It's easy to bring to wherever you're going to go. But if a truck breaks down, and I have seen somebody with their food truck on the back of a tow truck coming into Thompson's Point ahead of a concert because their truck broke down. So that's a consideration too. And then there's the trailer. A trailer can contain everything, but you need a vehicle to tow it. And you also need to learn how to back that thing up. So get good with your mirrors. A little bit of practice, that'd be good. Which license are you going to need? The mobile vendor's license is something that you get through the Department of Agriculture. So these are for the prepared food or the dry food that we talk about. In this license, excuse me, when you apply for that, that's also going to be when you apply for your kitchen license as well. And usually people that are under the Department of Ag, Culture, looking at a home kitchen license. So again, if you are doing baked goods, you can do it out of there. If you're doing candies or sauces, you can get your home kitchen license. And that mobile vendor license is just an extra box that you check when you go for your food and fuel license. And I believe it's either 10 or $20 for, adding that on, but it's a good thing to have. Then we have the Eating Place Mobile. This is through DHHS. There's a few more requirements here. You need a commissary kitchen. You cannot use your home kitchen for any DHHS food license. You can build out a kitchen in your home. So that is an option, but it has to be separate from the one that you use for your house. Or again, a commissary kitchen somewhere, or the unit itself. All mobile units under this license, you have to have some kind of hand washing station, a gray tank for the water, cleanable surfaces, and you need to be able to keep your proper temperature control. How it works is the state is going to have you submit your menu, and then they're going to determine what your unit needs. So these are the different classifications. Anything that's low risk, right, like pretzels, candy, apples, things like that, isn't going to require nearly the equipment of something that's high risk, which would be your meats, eggs, poultry, seafood, things like that. You submit the menu to DHHS, then they're going to determine the risk and the requirements. And that's how you build out your unit. And if you don't think the unit's going to sustain it, then again, we're looking at a commissary kitchen. When you're operating the unit, they require that there's a person in charge at all times. And that person or somebody that's working on there, but typically it is the person, has to have their food protection manager's certification. And this certification lasts about 5 years. Every eating establishment in the state of Maine has to have this, has to have somebody on board, and they actually have to be present as well. When I had my restaurant, there was 5 of us with our certifications, which was great because if somebody was out, there was always somebody that had that was the certified person. This is something that you have to have ahead of filing for your license. And it's going to be a requirement when you file for your license. If the person that you have that's certified leaves, you have 60 days to replace their certification with somebody else, get somebody else certified. And this must be visible at all times. So if they come to inspect, they have to be able to see that. Certainly if you're working in a cart or something like that, as long as you have it with you and you can show proof, but it's got to be available for inspection. And these are the links for licensing. Excuse me. If you're in the city of Portland, South Portland, or Lewiston, you'll get a municipal food license. If you only intend on doing business, let's say in Portland, and you're not going to go beyond the city limits, that's the only license you need. But if you are going to go to events or anything else, even if you're, doing catering, weddings, stuff like that, then you are going to need the DHHS EP mobile license. But there is a different link for you click on, it says you already have your municipal food license. So they're not going to charge you as much because you've already paid money to the cities that require the municipal food license. The kitchen. I love this kitchen. I would definitely would want to work in it. But do I need all this equipment here? Probably not. You know, depending on what you're doing, you know, really thinking about the requirements from DHHS and then what you need, and then does it fit where you're looking at, whether it's in your home, on the unit, or not in your home, I should say, whether it's on the unit or you rent another kitchen. And when you do rent a production kitchen, you have to, whether the kitchen's licensed or not, you need to get it licensed. But for example, you know, you could go and your local AMVETS or American Legions, Eagles clubs, churches, places like that. Many of those have licensed kitchens. You still need to get your business licensed to use that kitchen. And the same if you go into a membership-based kitchen. Fork is probably the most well and best known in the Southern Maine area. And even though Fork is licensed as a commissary kitchen, every member within Fork has to have their own license as well. So considerations there is the cost of any of these things and the availability too. You know, even if a church can accommodate you, that may not work for your schedule. Because maybe you can only do production on certain days and the kitchen's not available. So when you look at this, look at the availability as well. Also, if you join a membership kitchen, see how full that kitchen is. Can you get in and use the equipment you need on time? Because we're starting to see these places fill up too. So I would really look at, you know, those consideration, or do you want to be processing or doing your prep at 2 o'clock in the morning? Where are you going to set up this business? Location is key, right? Um, Great shot of the Eastern Prom in the morning. And that is one very popular location. I did call the city of Portland and I didn't get an answer back on whether, and if anybody knows, please throw it in the chat. I'm not sure if there is a charge for being on the Eastern Prom, if they're still doing the lottery. And so I apologize. I would have liked to have that information ahead of this, but haven't heard back. So I know that that's a prime location, but there are also other places in the city that is public use space. You just have to contact them and see what streets and what days of the week you can be set up on those streets. And in other municipalities, there might be a park that is available or something at the beach, or parking lots that are part of the public way. Just check with your town. If there's a location you think, oh, this will be a great area for me to set up my mobile business, find out about it. The other thing is like Bangor Waterfront, that's about 1,500 for the season. And I think it goes from the beginning of May to the end of October. Brunswick Mall is a great location. A lot of businesses have been there for a long time. They have a farmer's market a couple times a week. That's 2,000. The last I knew it was 2,000 and it included electricity. But it's kind of tough to get in there. Belfast, I just saw this on 207 the other night, Cheeky, Maine. So this location used to be an event center and it's right on the water in Belfast. Unfortunately, the event center burned down. The family still owns the property and they wanted to keep it. So they decided to make it a food truck park. Right now for this season, they're only allowing 2 trucks, and I think it's 2 trucks per week or per day per week, something like that. But check that out. It's a great area. A lot of folks know that Thompson's Point has their Summer Sunset series. Check into that because I believe it's kind of a first come, first serve, or they give you certain dates. Cogden's down in Wells, they purport to have the largest food truck park in the state. I know that that can be a super busy area because there are a lot of tourists down there. So, you know, these are all kind of fixed locations you can think about if you want to be like, I want to be there on a regular basis. My customers are always going to be able to find me. Those might be places that you go to. Or you can do events, right? So for events, you want to think about really scheduling this ahead, and you're most likely a lot of these events the year before certainly months before the event. You're going to want to be connected with them, sign up for it, and be prepared. Most likely, you're going to need a lot of prep done ahead of time and know what your storage capacity is on your unit. Where can you keep things? If you need a lot of refrigeration, how are you, going to hold that? Do you have a generator? Can you get to suppliers? Do you have enough staff for something that's big? Um, Freiburg Fair is huge, right? It's probably the biggest agricultural fair that we have in the state. And I know there's one company, Sunshine Pizza, been there for years and years and years. And they pretty much make in that 1 week their earnings for a year. Like it's that big of an event, but it takes a lot of staff and a lot of preparation. They prep for months in advance of that to be ready for it. Think about limiting your menu if you're going to an event. So maybe you don't have everything on your menu, but that way you can have plenty of the key items that you want to sell. Other things to consider is, do you want to do caterings? Some people just specialize in doing weddings and birthday parties, family reunions. There are all kinds of opportunities to do that. Some people do that as an aside to being in a somewhat fixed location. And then what are you going to charge for that too? Um, People sometimes charge a fee to have the truck there, or they charge mileage to be there. So think about that. Corporations too are really key. I know like lots of times a company will have events and they'll have, like employee appreciation events, and they'll want food trucks to come in. So that's another thing. These are links to some festivals and the fairs in the state just to kind of get an idea. But Maine is amazing. We celebrate all kinds of food. Like we have a whoopie pie festival, we've got the Wilton Blueberry Festival, Lobster Festival, the Moxie Festival, right? We just like to, I think it's because winter is so long. Come summer, there's like every day probably of the week, there's something going on. So I'm sure you can find an event that would work for you. How do you get found? Well, you're in a location, you're doing events. Of course, people are going to find you, but like any other business, you need to kind of keep your name out there. Wrapping your truck or trailer is kind of key. That identifies you, right? So this is the marketing part that we talk about a little bit, and being consistent in that. Social media, probably a good thing to be on. A lot of people that like to follow food, mobile food businesses like to be on social media. They want to hear, where you are and what you're doing. If you have a website, that's great. Online ordering is another consideration if you're going to do that. There are also apps that you can subscribe to where people can find you, like Truckster and the Street Food Finder. There's also the Portland Food Map that you can sign up for. And I know there's fees associated with all of these, but it's a way to keep you connected with your clients. But have it printed somewhere. So like Falafel Mafia, which I've always loved the name. I think it's a neat name, and they have, join the mafia thing. But they posted a schedule here. So this is from last year. It's probably off their website, just shows the events where they're going to be. So as a customer, you'll be able to find them. Or I should say, your customers will be able to find you. And this is what you want to do with your business is information, keep people up to date. Because it's terrible if you're always on the Eastern Prom and then somebody shows up, that people show up just for you and you're not there. It's almost like when restaurants have their hours posted, and then they're closed, but they haven't informed anybody ahead. They didn't change it on, their Google business page. So make sure you keep your customers up to date. Other details. So we've talked a lot about the licensing, how you get there, how you get seen, where the possibilities are. But what POS system are you going to use? Point of sale systems now can be very expensive, or you can strip them down. And I would say if you are like an ice cream vendor and all you're going to sell is like 10 different flavors of ice cream, I would probably recommend doing something as simple as Square. It's not hugely sophisticated and it's probably the least expensive. If you have multiple menu modifiers and maybe you have a couple different trucks and trailers that you're going to put out there, maybe, and you want the POS system to do more for you, Toast, which is pretty expensive, but it will do a lot. Sometimes people have their payroll in there. They have online ordering, a lot of sophistication going in there, and but you're paying for those. So think about what your needs are before signing on to a POS system. And if you Google the top 10 POS systems for restaurants, a ton of them come up. Typically, the top three are Toast, Clover, and Square. And then what kind of payments are you accepting? Cash. There are now all kinds of apps like Apple Pay and Venmo. Still, people use credit cards as well. Income taxes, and we talked about sales tax, but also making sure that you're keeping up with your quarterly tax filings and keeping track of your sales. So at the end of the year, you're paying the proper income tax rate, payroll and tips. And how are you going to do the tip pooling? This has kind of become people in the industry that work in the service industry. It's my tips, it's my tips. So knowing ahead of time, how are we going to distribute those tips? Event fees. So we talk about some of these bigger events, they can be some hefty fees. There's great return in those, but also thinking about how you're going to pay those fees. And maybe that's back at the beginning when we talk about sources and uses. If you know that you're going to do 5 or 10 events, and maybe that's, $7,000 or $8,000 worth of, event fees. We want to work that in. Maintaining, whether it's, a cart or a trailer or a truck, there's a cost to that, and the fuel to tow things, storage. So while it's not being used when it has to be somewhere, if it's your commissary kitchen, you also need to make sure that you have the electricity to keep that refrigeration or freezer going. So because you're storing food on your vehicle, you have to maintain the proper temperature. And then if it's seasonal, I think most people that have trucks and trailers by, November, December, they're done, because a lot of people don't want to go out beyond that bad weather. So winterization, and there's a cost to that as well. So these are some other considerations when you go into this industry. I said there would be plenty of time for questions, and I think I left, oh yes, we have more than enough time. So we have 20 minutes now for questions and answers. And I'm just gonna open it up. Aaron, if anybody has questions.
Yeah, I didn't see any. Tina just posted something here in the chat that being on the Eastern Prom is still by lottery, and she provided a link. So I guess we could maybe include that link as a separate attachment when we send out the slides.
Yeah, that would be great. I also, if anybody had questions that we didn't get answered here, if you want to just go ahead and unmute yourself, I love to have a conversation with folks. So please feel free.
Well, this is Sean. I had a quick question.
Sure.
So I already have my business plan, my LLC. I just didn't get the business up and running. Do I still have to file my quarterly report to the state, or do I only have to do that once my business starts actually doing business?
So when we talk about your business hasn't brought in any money, right?
That's correct. No, we haven't started or anything, but we did get our LLC, and I've been getting a lot of emails from the state telling me to report my sales, but I don't have any. So I'm not sure if I still need to do that filing or.
Yep, you're gonna want to file and just report 0 for sales, right?
Okay,
You
perfect.
never want to ignore the state if they are reaching out asking for that information. And then certainly, Sean, are you gonna open this season or?
Probably not. I'm still in school, so I
Okay.
kind of got to jump on it ahead of. I got a little bit ahead of myself, essentially.
Sure, no, that's great. But yeah, so when it comes to your taxes at the end of 2025 here, all of the money that you've put into this is something that you can expense out. And again, I'm going to defer to an accountant, but please make sure that you keep track of all those receipts. Sometimes people think, oh, that was nothing, or I got it on Facebook Marketplace or whatever. Keep everything. All right. And you can even keep it electronically if you want. Sometimes people scan in the receipts or they take pictures and they just put them on a file on their laptop. Okay.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have a question? I'll leave it open for a few more minutes, and folks are also welcome to email me if you don't feel like asking a question, or if you think about something afterwards. Of course, this is not moving now. Let's see. I was going to say, I did include in the next couple slides, there's contact information for me and for the Maine SBDC. Again, our advising is free. So please register for advising. That's all we ask folks to do. And then you can meet with myself, or I think we have a total of 12 advisors throughout our organization. And we're not just Portland based, by the way. I know I use Portland, but that's because I'm located in Cumberland and York counties for advising, but we have advisors throughout the entire state. So if you're up in the Bangor area, we'd probably connect you with Allie or somebody else in that area that can help you and knows the area really well. All right, Aaron, I'm seeing a couple things in the chat.
We just got another question in the chat. Says, can you store paper products off from your trailer, or would you need commissary for anything?
Okay, so your paper storage of your paper goods, they just have to be stored properly, right? So just like in your kitchen, things have to be like 6 inches off the ground, etc. So if you had a closet, because this is not a non-hazardous thing, it just has to be clean, dry area for storage. So if you had something that's separate, it has to stay separate from other things. You could store it off of your truck to save room. You're welcome, Sandra. Great. And that, right, that's another consideration really, is like, how much room do you need, for what you're doing? And we really want to stick, and the state is good about working with folks too. So they're not there to try and grab your license back or deny you a license. They just want to make sure that what you're producing, where you're producing, and how you're producing it is going to be safe for the, paying, consuming public.
This is Sean again. I have one more question.
Sure.
So I'm thinking about doing just in the interim where I'm not. So my business model is loaded baked potatoes. But in the interim, in the interim, I'm thinking about doing like an energy drink stand for Lotus Plant Power.
Sure.
Is that something that I would need a license for, or
yes.
Really okay. I do need a license. Okay.
You do need, I mean, is it something that you are going to mix up these drinks for folks, or are you selling them by the bottle?
So I would be mixing up the drinks for the folks.
Yeah, you would need to get licensed to do that. So
okay.
Yeah, just because there is the possibility of contamination, right? So,
gotcha.
So you want to check with DHHS about how you go about that.
Okay.
I know bottling beverages is a totally other thing, but that would go under like an energy drink is kind of like a smoothie type thing.
Right.
So there's
Yeah.
DHHS. Yeah.
Because everything I'm searching on it is coming up with open your own bar. And I'm like, no, this isn't. This is non-alcoholic. So
sure. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a whole other thing. And we're not going to talk about bar. I purposely didn't go into, because you could be a mobile bar, but that's a whole other set of licensing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I did want to just let you know, Sean, my colleague Grace reminded me, and this is a good reminder for everybody. If you have an LLC and you've had it since last year, you need to make sure that you file your annual report before June 1st with the state. So if you haven't already, You want to
Okay.
go to the state and file your annual report because that keeps your LLC in good standing.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. So please go ahead and do that. I think it's $85 to file and you can do it right online.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Oysters on the half shell. My understanding is that it's still under the same license with DHHS. Just a matter of they're going to want to look as far as they're going to look at your menu and they're going to want to know that you're going to be able to control the temperature of the shellfish, which because we know it's raw. But I would check with the DHHS on that for sure. And then somebody else had a question here about commissary kitchen.
I think that was for the paper products.
Oh, okay, yep. I think we got all of that.
Yeah. Oh, and you want me to read this one from Tina?
Oh, Tina, thank you so much. Yes, go ahead, Aaron.
All right. It says if you are a brick and mortar restaurant and service shellfish, you need a license from the Department of Maine Resources. And says I assume the same applies for mobile.
Marine resources. So when I had a restaurant
Oh,
and I
marine,
served,
yes.
Yes.
and I had raw fish on the, or I was getting, I had to report where I was getting fish from. So, and also if it's a shellfish product, you have to, you get tags on your shellfish bags in case anybody gets sick.
Right.
And it did require a license from Marine Resources.
Yeah, and thank you for that point, Tina, because I was not even thinking about the fact that it's raw. So that is absolutely true. And you do have to keep your tags. So if you're not growing your own oysters, because I know lots of times people are doing this and they have oyster farms. So thank you. Yeah, we want to make sure that we tick all those boxes. And I'm sure that DHHS, if you went for the license, they would have told you that, but I appreciate that input. Does anybody else have anything they want to ask, or do they want to talk about what they're going to do for their business?
Chris, I was just going to mention that sometimes as an advisor, I get the question about going to other towns. And I think you covered this, but a lot of people, go all over the state with their truck for events. And you just want to double check with your whatever town you might be going into, if there is any kind of requirement with that town. Most small towns, the state license is all you need. But you do want to check before you assume you can just go into a town and understand what their own local requirements might be.
Yeah, that is true, Tina. And I remember years ago when I had a sauce business, we had to have a vitulers license from the town of Yarmouth to do the Yarmouth Clam Festival. So I'm not sure if that's still the case, but true, right? You definitely want to check. You don't want somebody to come by and close you down. So
On that note, what happens if you go into like say Massachusetts or another state? Do
oh
you
yeah,
like
you right, you have to get licensed in that state. That's a whole other thing. Like somebody else who's a food vendor, with a mobile unit cannot come into Maine without getting licensed to be here. And they also have to register for sales tax and everything else, just like a Maine business would have to do. Yes, and they have to report their sales in Maine as well.
sounds complex?
Yes, yeah. So not to say you can't, go out to another state, but you need to see what their regulations are. Well, we are about 9 minutes ahead of schedule. I think everybody's asked the questions they'd like to ask, and I do appreciate folks being here today and spending the time. The last two slides that I cannot get to move to has contact information. We also have a YouTube channel with some really good resources on there about starting and running your business. And we have an e-course platform as well. So we do have some courses on e-learning about marketing and accounting and some other things about being a business owner and again, there is a link to register for advising. That's the core thing that we do is provide folks with advising. I'd love to hear people's ideas. You're welcome to contact me or register with other folks, but if you just have a one-off question, please feel free to email me and I will email you back. Outside of that, it is absolutely gorgeous day, a little cold out there, but I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the day, and happy Easter weekend if you celebrate that. Thanks and have a good day, everyone.